Just to reiterate what Bart just said, we'll ask everyone to please silence all electronic devices so we can have proper decorum and dignity during the course of the Levaya, during the service. We're going to start with a parak of Tehillim, a chapter from Psalms. Parak Chav Gimel. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echzor, binot esher yabitzeni memenuchot yinaleini, nafshi yishovev yanchen v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Kam ki elech b'geitz amavet lo yira ki ato imodi, shiftoch mishantecha hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shocha neged tzoriro, idishanta b'shem en roshi kosi rivoya. Ach tov v'chesed yudefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beit Adonai li'orech yamim. The song of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God makes me lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous path for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. We gather here today to pay our respects to beloved son, brother, uncle, great uncle, companion and friend to everyone who knew him, Beryl David, Ventraga Faivel Chaim, Mr. Bradley David Stark. It is a Friday before Shabbat and Yom Tov, so we're going to try to move expeditiously, but at the same time pay justice to a man with an incredible heart, incredible kindness. I'm going to ask the members of the family to each share a few words. We'll start first with his niece and nephews, and then with his two brothers. Talia?
Yes, I do. I tried a number of times to write down thoughts, but each time was the same. I would think of an amazing memory involving Uncle Brad, which would make me smile, and then I would just burst into tears. So this time around, yes, unfortunately, I've had to be up here more times than I like to say goodbye to loved ones. I've decided to speak about Uncle Brad through a letter I've written to him and wish he had a chance to receive. Dear Uncle Brad, Bradmo, Bimo, I'm sorry that I did not call you more, text you more, tell you that I loved you more. You were one of my biggest cheerleaders, whether it was rooting me on at a basketball game, congratulating me on an academic accomplishment, or just making me feel like a star in my everyday life. There was never a dull moment when you were around. The times I laughed the hardest were your doing. You were my sitcom uncle. Crazy Uncle Bimo, being his silly, amazing, fun self. You were one of the smartest people I have ever met. I could ask you anything and you would be able to give me some sort of an answer. To be fair, a large number of those answers were total BS, but you masterfully pulled it off as truth. I was your Tweety Pie, but more importantly, I was a daughter to you. You were so proud of me. In fact, I recall a conversation we had where you told me how proud you were of me for being in medical school and called me your hero, an inspiration for taking one day at a time and tackling each obstacle as it approached. I was so excited when I graduated from medical school to make you proud and to serve as further encouragement to persevere. You were instrumental in getting me to that point. You were the hero, Bradmo, not me. I learned perseverance from you. Not too long ago, I was standing here speaking about your mother, Grandma Harriet. Well, the apple does not fall far from the tree. You were one of the most generous people I have ever met. You would have given me the moon if I asked for it. You also had amazing taste. My favorite pair of earrings are ones that you got me in the airport, of all places, that you said you saw and immediately thought of me. Not to mention your beautiful sculpting and pottery work. I asked you for a washing cup just in passing during one of our conversations about your pottery that then set you off on a mission to make the most perfect washing cup for me, along with an entire tea set, Kiddush cup, bowls, and many other beautiful pieces. I I need to be honest with you. When I heard the news, of course I was sad. But I was also angry. Angry that the disease got the best of my heroic uncle. Angry that I wouldn't get to see your smiling face one more time. And get to give you a huge bear hug while taking in a whiff of your very strong cologne. Thankfully, though, this anger turned into understanding and to peace of mind. I know how hard you struggled every day against this disease and with the pain from other ailments. I'm glad you went peacefully. One of my happiest memories of you was last Passover at the Atlantis, when you, my mom, and I, just the three of us, went on a few water slides together. Hearing your infectious laugh and seeing your huge smile as we made our way down the slides and through the lazy river is an image of you that will stick with me forever. Moments of pure joy and no pain. A few months ago, I got a text from you saying, "Good Shabbos, ... I want to fix you up on a date with Baker Mayfield." I apologize that shidduch never happened. But I'm even more sorry that I won't get to dance with you at Bezrat Hashem, my wedding, or the Brown Super Bowl party. All of this is to say that I hope you know how much you meant to me, how much I felt loved by you, and how much I love you. I will always and forever be your Tweety Pie. Go Browns.
Before I share my remarks, Brad's longtime girlfriend Louie has asked me to read some words. Brad, I just want to say thank you for your amazing love for me. Everybody knows how great you are. Thank you to your family and friends that are here today. Even though you are leaving us, you are always in our hearts and never forgotten. You are always our sunshine that will never fade. Thank you so much for being a great father to Eugene. He is so proud of you. You're going to miss his high school graduation and college in the future, but you inspired him, and I'm sure he will do his best for you and show his diploma in the future, with God's will. We are so proud of you. We loved you so much. Forever is not enough for me to love you. Louis. Unlike some of my Jewish friends, I never grew up with Christmas envy, because I had Santa Claus in my life, and I was his nephew. Like Santa, Uncle Brad never showed up empty-handed. From when me and my siblings were children to when we had children of our own, he always came bearing gifts. Where these gifts came from, we will never know. I could run into him unexpectedly, and somehow he would pull a gift out for me as though he was always prepared for the next time he might see us. And he didn't just give gifts in the same way as everyone else. At one time when he was living in North Carolina, his gift giving got so plentiful that my siblings and I had to tell him that we had no more room in our closets for additional Duke and North Carolina gear. But it wasn't his presence that brought us joy, it was his presence. Brad had a presence that could not go unnoticed. Between his physical size and his larger-than-life personality, he left his mark on every moment. And Brad's presence wasn't taken for granted. There was a period in our childhood when he wasn't around because he was working on himself, and unfortunately, he had to miss Ezra and Jacob's bar mitzvahs. I remember praying and hoping that he would make it to mine. Lo and behold, he did, and that made me feel so special. And I liked to think that making it to that family event helped to motivate him. And I know that throughout the years, his family was always his motivation and inspiration for doing what he needed to do to be able to be present. And he would tell us this, and it made us feel so worthwhile that just our being was his motivation. And I was always so proud of him. And for all the years that he was present, he left me with so many special memories. Some of my most vivid, fun childhood memories are with Brad. I remember sitting on the floor of my parents' room watching wrestling with Brad and my brothers. Now, can you picture the scene? Not only did Brad look like the guys that we were watching on TV, but he brought the action into the room. all of a sudden we'd be sitting there and then he'd shout, loose change, and he'd start shaking his pockets so that money would be flying all over the room, and me and my brothers had to wrestle on the ground to try to grab the coins. And I was the little one, so he would always protect me but still make sure that I was part of the action and that I could get some. Or we'd be walking and all of a sudden he'd pull out a little bag of a toy or coin and he'd just throw it on the street and he'd just say, grab bag, and that just meant that we had to run and try to grab whatever it was that he was throwing. He was just the most fun uncle that any kid could dream of. And so much of my parenting and uncling style is inspired by him. I try so hard for my kids and my nieces and nephews to think of me as the fun dad/uncle, like Brad was to us. And so when I'm with them, I'm with them. I come down to their level to play with them, like literally come down to my hands and knees, like Uncle Brad used to do when giving us bucking bronco rides. And I try to make them feel special and loved, like I am just another big kid that they can be friends with. And of course, I bring presents. There are so many moments in our lives that have been defined by Brad's personality, and these will always be Brad moments for us. For generations, rabbis will write that if you never saw Brad boo and make other outrageous sounds at the utterance of Haman's name during Megillah reading, then you haven't witnessed the true celebration of Purim. They will write that if you haven't participated in a Brad-led conga line around a room as you sang Lashana Haba B'Yushalayim at the end of a Seder, then you don't understand the pure joy of freedom and redemption. If you haven't been on a roller coaster or water slide with Brad and heard his blood-curdling screams, that you've never heard the sound of real fear. All of these things, when we experience these moments throughout the rest of our lives, we will always be reminded of Brad. Growing up, I knew, since Brad didn't have any kids of his own, that we were his legacy and that one day we would have to take care of him. And now we won't be able to, and I'm sad because I never viewed that as an obligation, but as an amazing honor. That we'd be able to reciprocate his unconditional love that he always demonstrated for us. But we hope that we can continue to make him so proud. And while the baseball hats and toys might be no longer, the memories that Brad has given us are gifts that we'll cherish for a lifetime.
Larger than life. That's the best way to describe Uncle Brad, lovingly known as BMO. As a young child, Brad and his two brothers tragically lost their father to cancer. It's no secret that this event led him down a treacherous path, and he ended up battling these demons his entire life. But thankfully, between these patches of darkness, there was an abundance of light. When my siblings and I were younger, Brad was the epitome of the fun, crazy uncle, as you've heard. He would get us the toys our parents never would. He would buy pay-per-view wrestling events and hold our own matches. He even invented a rodeo game called Bucking Bronco, where he would award money to the kid who could hang onto his back the longest. Note that I didn't say he was the safest uncle. With an impish grin and a mischievous twinkle in his eye, Brad always knew when to play the court jester. Many years ago, he joined our family on a vacation to Disney World. Somehow, Ezra and I convinced him to take us on Space Mountain, even though we were both nervous about such a big ride. As we slowly started our terrifying ascent, Brad, sensing our unease, suddenly broke into character and started screaming at the mannequins in spacesuits that he made a mistake and wanted off. Hey, you, get me out of this thing! Ezra and I thought this was just about the funniest thing we had ever seen. I actually still do. Brad then proceeded to make every nauseous face possible and scream Ralph for the duration of the ride. Before we knew it, the supposedly scary thing was over, yet our cheeks were streaked with tears of laughter. Some of you may also know that for a fairly large guy, Brad was surprisingly nimble on his feet, which not only made him a great dancer, but also really good at sneaking into places. It could be at the shopping center convention in Las Vegas with a fleet of security, or even at heavily guarded high holiday services. You would look up, and suddenly there he was. If you asked him how he did it, he would just give a little shrug and a wink. He also had an infectious laugh and the inability to whisper, which you would definitely know if you sat near him in a synagogue. A diehard Cleveland sports fan through thick and thin, and it's been a lot of thin, There was never a Browns game that went by where I didn't receive a flurry of texts with random capital letters and punctuation marks that detailed where the team went wrong. It's crazy to admit, but one of the first things I thought after I heard he passed was, this isn't fair. The Browns are supposed to be good this year. When we watched the Cavs finally win the championship in 2016, we rolled around on my floor, hugging and screaming in disbelief far longer than was socially acceptable. I will always treasure that moment. In his work life, Brad was a true Renaissance man. A talented artist and sculptor, my family proudly uses the ceramic washing cups that he made before every Shabbat meal. He was also a great stock trader and enjoyed emailing BMO's Mad Money stock tips to everyone in his address book, whether they wanted them or not. Chiefly, though, Brad had a passion and a talent for finding raw development sites at overlooked intersections, earning him the nicknames of the Corner King and the Dirt Dog. It is of some comfort to know that he passed away doing what he loved, traveling off the beaten path and searching for that next great piece of property. Most importantly, though, everyone that knew Brad knows he had the purest soul and a huge heart. Much like my grandmother, Brad's greatest joy was to give to others. Whether it was commissioning a new Torah for the Kollel, supporting Fuchs Mizrahi's athletic program, or just buying gifts for his friends, he was always quick to put the needs of others ahead of his own. For the past 10 years or so, Brad's lived in Los Angeles with his dear Louie and Eugene, and I've been fortunate to live in the same city with my own family. Brad was a frequent guest at our place, coming over for Shabbat and holiday meals, or just to hang out. But perhaps the thing he enjoyed the most was randomly showing up at our door with toys for my 3 sons. The man was like a Jewish Santa Claus, as David said, sporting ruddy cheeks, a bright kippah, and endless bags of joy. He was so giving, in fact, that my wife and I had to impose a limit on the amount of toys he could bring per visit. After receiving the news a few days ago, I immediately went to Brad's home to visit with Louie and Eugene. When I finally got up to leave, Louie told me to wait a moment. She had 2 bags full of toys that Brad was excited to give my boys after he returned from his work trip. Dumbstruck, I slung the bags into my car and broke down behind the steering wheel. The man had somehow found a way to slip in one last gift, one last example of his generous spirit. Before I left for Cleveland, I couldn't bring myself to take the bags out of my car. It just didn't seem right that I was going to be the one to deliver these toys. It was too painful. But God willing, when I get home later today, I'm going to deliver BMO's gifts and put smiles on my kids' faces, because I know that's what he would have wanted, and really, all he ever wanted. We love you.
I apologize in advance. There are going to be a few repeated themes. In 120 years, I get to go first. Sorry. My uncle Brad, a.k.a. Brad Mo, a.k.a. B-Mo, and then recently a.k.a. Tag Mo, was and will forever be one of the most influential people in my life. He was a member of our nuclear family, vacillating between being an uncle to a sibling, depending on the situation. He was the first person to make me cry laughing, and he continued to do so throughout the years, whether it was eating a raw gourd off of the sukkah roof or a cactus fruit from the shuk, and both situations followed by the obvious outcome. Yelling at the mannequins at Space Mountain, trying to get off the ride, and various bathroom humor that I will use discretion for once and not share at this moment. We did not write this together, me and my brothers, but I also called him a Santa Claus. He was Santa Claus every day. Never coming over empty-handed, always with bags of toys and sports paraphernalia. He always attended our high school sports games, would rent WrestleMania pay-per-view, and was always available for a ride to the airport. He would randomly empty his pockets, spilling tons of coins, yelling loose change, while my siblings and I would scramble to collect them. And my favorite all-time Brad shtick was the bucking bronco, where he would get on all fours and proceed to do his best impression of a mechanical bull. He only recently retired, I think, when I was in my 20s, and I almost drowned him, so because he couldn't get me off. So, and I think he pulled something. It was impossible not to be happy or smiling when you were around him. He was always engaging, always on. But all these amazing memories of him is not what made him influential to me. It's what people didn't see. It was below that his surface that inspired me every day and literally saved my life countless times. His zest for life was in constant battle with ADD, depression, OCD, and anxiety. It attacked him 24/7. I inherited the same disorders and that he suffered from, and again, if you don't have it, you can't understand it. The best thing I could find that was analogous was if you suffered from back pain. And as you know, if you have that underlying level of pain beneath the surface, it takes such a Herculean effort just to try to do normal functioning. It's the same thing with these mental illness. And like I said, if you don't suffer from it, you cannot understand. No matter how hard you try, because it's indescribable. It's only experiential. My Uncle Brad, he understood me like no one else in my family, and I him. We would have late night conversations, 1 or 2 in the morning, giving each other support and pep talks. As much as he showed me what not to do, like self-medicate, he showed me how to be a warrior and never give up no matter how many times you fall down. When I was down, he picked me up. After all, I was his emo to his BMO, his favorite oldest nephew, who he was so proud of, and he constantly reminded me of that. I lost one of my biggest cheerleaders this week. I will miss the shop's sports pages, the trail of tag body spray, the unconditional love, and that goofy grin. I will carry the inspiration and encouragement he has given me for the rest of my life.
It was no secret that Brad struggled with some very dark demons, including addiction, his whole life. I remember the first time I was here was at my father's funeral. Brad was 8 years old, and I think it shaped his life and Bob's and mine as well. I wanted to be more of a part of that struggle. I wanted to talk to him about it. I wanted to try and help him. We all did. It wasn't really possible. He wouldn't talk truthfully about it. And I think that was part of the struggle that he had. He had to deal with it in his own way. And I found him often to be very frustrating. I wanted to engage him. I wanted to help him. I wanted to talk to him. And he often dissembled, whether it was about his weight or about his smoking, about drugs. It was hard to get him to tell the truth. And I didn't know whether he knew he was lying or whether he so believed that fiction that he would create that he thought it was true. And I've been to too many of these memorials, and to me, it's a lot about the person who's giving the eulogy or stating the memory, even more than about the person who died. And in my case, I regret that I focused so much on trying to find out the truth and trying to be helpful to Brad. Because in the end, the truth about him was quite different. It was what you have been hearing, that he was generous, that he was playful, that he was amusing, that he was engaging. Those were the important things about him. I feel bad about the struggle. We all do. But what was important was how he went above it to become somebody extraordinary in his own way and with such a great impact on all the people that know him. Since he died, everyone I've run into who knows him tells me how much they liked him, how nice he was, how sweet he was, how caring he was. That's what's important. And I'm very proud to have been his older brother.
This is one of the few times I have anything prepared. I normally wing it, and I only have it prepared because good friends in Israel said that they were going to light the yahrzeit candle at this time of the Levaya, and they wanted to be able to share with their children, you know, something about who Brad was, and they asked me to tell them. So I wound up writing an email to them, and then I realized, you know, that I had created a eulogy, and so I'm going to use that. But before I do, I just from observing what we've just observed, first of all, who could be more blessed than I to have children, a brother and a family like the family that I have, who are an aspect of who Bradley was. I mean, it's remarkable, and I thank Hashem from the deepest part of my soul for the bracha of having such a family. I also, it's tradition, you know, to believe that the soul of the departed is close to us at this time, and to, you know, ask the soul, to ask the departed to forgive us for the things that we could have done better, for the mistakes that we made or how we took things for granted. And I hope that Bradley's soul will provide mechila for all of us, for, you know, how the many ways that I'm sure that we failed him. And then all of these testimonies made me think to pose the question to all of us, you know, if you had the choice, you're standing in line ready to be delivered, you know, to this existence, ready to be born into this world, and God gives you a choice of being whatever you want. You can be, you know, a doctor, a lawyer, a sailor, a billionaire, you name it, you know, a politician, or over here you see, you could be the person who brings joy into the world. What would you pick? You know, if you had the wisdom of the perspective from heaven. I think most of us would understand the value, as Jim just so eloquently described, of providing joy to a world that needs it so badly. Joy and love. And that's the profession that Bradley picked. That's the role in life that he chose and that he was so good at. So now I'll turn to these remarks that I prepared. Bradley, like our mother, was totally selfless and was always giving. His capacity to love people was limitless, and his neshama, his soul, was always on his face. No one who ever met him would have anything negative to say about Brad. He was the first person who I loved more than myself. From the moment he was born and brought home when I was not quite 5, I was immediately connected to him and knew that I wanted to protect him and watch over him forever. Then, when we lost our father, when Bradley was barely 8 years old, my role as his guardian came into its own. Bradley and I are symbiotic. And he was a member of our nuclear family, not just an uncle. Marla and Bradley were real brother and sister. Ezra, Jacob, David, and Talia are his real children. He was a hero and a warrior. Like King David, like David HaMelech, constantly at war with the Satan for 5 decades. Until, like King David, like David HaMelech, Satan attacked him when his guard was down. He was very artistic and analytical. He was a sculptor, sketcher, and potter. He had a steel trap memory and was brilliant with numbers. He loved to be involved in the creative and financial aspects of real estate development and to be a part of Stark Enterprises. Hashem blessed him with tremendous success from his real estate pursuits. I don't think people realize how incredibly successful he was. But his true life's work was to bring joy to everyone he interacted with. He was a virtuoso in the art of joy-making, a rare and precious talent so needed by everyone. He was beloved to everyone. His genius in dispatching joy whenever and wherever he was at all times is in direct contrast to the sadness we are experiencing from the absence of his presence and of that joy. His nature was pure, naive, sensitive, and vulnerable. He loved all the kids at Fuchs Mizrahi School. And he was a main supporter of the sports program, strongly believing in its wellness value and in its lessons in midot, in manners, in team accomplishment, individual perseverance, and leadership. He loved Israel and everything that it stood for. And he loved Hashem. Bradley fulfilled his mission in this life. And I am so proud of him. Thank you, Hashem, for the gift of Bradley David Stark. Beryl David ben Shragafai v'chaim v'chana. Please, please hold Bradley close to your divine presence and shower him with your love and oneness and peace. He earned it. And you, Hashem, are the Dayan Emet.
Because we're in the days before Shavuot, we're not going to say the usual Kalmale, the memorial prayer. I'm going to end with another chapter from Tehillim, a chapter from Psalm. Vichtam le David, Shermeni el ki chasi tivach, amart Adonai Adonai ato tavati balalecha, laktoshi mesheba eretz hema, v'adirei kol chef sivam, yibuat votam acham haru, balasik nisehem idam, ubalatash motam asvata, Adonai menascha ki v'chosi ata tomich korali, Chavalim naftali banimim af nachala shafra Allah. Yevareches Adonai asher yatzani af leilot yisru nechilyoto. Shiviti Adonai l'nidi tamid. Ki mimini balemot. Lakein tzamach libi v'yagel kfodi apsari yishkon levetach. Ki lo tazov nafshi lisho lo sitein chachit kol li roshacha. Todi'eni orach hayim zvas machos et ponecha. Nimos b'mincha netzach. This concludes this part of our service. The interment will take place at the Beit Olam Cemetery. The family will be observing Shiva. It's a truncated Shiva. It's only today. And that will take place at the home of Marla and Bob Stark, 25036 Margot Court in Beechwood. That'll be today until 5 p.m. And who would like to contribute will do so to the Fuchs Mizrahi School.